I don't.
Okay, we're gonna get this thing going here. We'll call the special call meeting to order. Present time, Ford, Altamont, and Cox are not present. That's the board is present. Is that motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Okay, the subject of this special call is to work on the draft of the 2045 comprehensive plan, review and discussion. This is a work session between the board and the planning commission. And there's no public comment, but the public is more than welcome to stay and listen. This comprehensive plan has been under 4 public comments, and we'll have to do at least 1, maybe 2 more. So the public will have a chance to have 5 input, maybe 6, depending on whether the board sends it back to the planning commission or if it's to act on it at a later meeting. So with that, Carter, you have any comments?
I want to talk about just comprehensive plans in general, update. It's not a static document. It's always meant to be updated. The previous comp plan that we have is operating under the former municipal lines prior to the annexation. It goes through several different topics. And the land use section does have implementing zoning districts under those particular land uses that are also instrumental in regards to rezoning the annexed areas. That's all?
Turn it over to Mike Slavin and Associates, and they're going to kind of guide us through this.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board, planning commission, and citizens. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. This is a continuation of us getting input to make this comprehensive plan the best for this city and community. As the mayor mentioned, we've had a lot of good input from citizens that have come out, taken their time, and had their input into the comprehensive plan. And so tonight, what we would like to do in this joint work session between the mayor, board of aldermen, and the planning commission is allow you all additional time to make comments, ask questions, have input and all regarding the comprehensive plan. Now, one way to do that, to start it off, is we could go around to each member of the board and planning commission and let you all ask if you've got any questions or concerns or comments. Let you do that. How does that sound to everyone? Does that seem to work for everyone? Give everyone an individual opportunity?
Why don't we go by chapter?
Let's just see what we've got first. I'm assuming everybody agrees now. We've had the document long enough, so everybody's had a chance to fully review it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so who would like to start out? Who'd like to start?
Let's start with the planning commissioners first.
We'll start with planning commission. Okay.
Right, I'll let the director show off. Ricky Altamont is present now.
I'll go first, I guess. I kind of got a laundry list here. A lot of them are quick, and they're in no particular order, just to make sure this is extra confusing. But one of the things I had kind of like an under-addressed or unaddressed, and I just felt like short-term rentals are only mentioned once, and it was just kind of a monitor the impact on availability and permanent housing. I think we probably should dive into what we expect the short-term rentals to look like in the next 20 years. I couldn't find any mention of a library one time in the book. I don't know if I missed it, but I read it 3 times now, and I can't find even the word library one time. Homelessness has kind of become an issue if you go downtown. I didn't see the word homelessness or any kind of like effect on, how do we handle any kind of
Homeless
homelessness?
is not just a problem downtown.
Oh,
I just want
yeah,
to
I'm sorry.
clarify
Yeah,
that.
you're right, you're right. Yeah, homeless overall, right? I've got them over in my neighborhood the same, you're right. Again, golf carts, I only found one mention of it. It's kind of a throwaway. What are we gonna do with golf carts? I didn't see anything talking about the county-city relationship, any kind of like repaving efforts that the county does, any of the other assistance with the county. I don't remember what section it's in, but your plan talks about downtown, central, east, and annex is kind of the four areas, but then we only have a downtown section for any kind of specific planning places. We had 11 street projects in here, we had 8 intersections, and we had 6 and 5 sewer and water projects. I mean, is that all we're gonna do? Is that just, but then we have projects we know about that aren't in here, so Deanna, Riley, Washington, aren't in here, and those are planned projects. I know we have some funds coming in, but it seems like those should be addressed. I actually think your goals and objectives section is good, but I have a couple problems with it. One, I don't see, the goals and objectives are good, but I don't see anywhere to link, like, how do we accomplish any of them? I really don't see any link between an actionable item and the goals. There's a modicum of link between the guiding principles, but I think the goals are a little bit better than those. And then also I don't see, so goal 2.8 is to connect Groveland Road through to Riley Road, but that's not a transportation project, so I don't understand why if we have that as a goal, why that would be included in the plan. Goal 2.9 is underpass on Halsted, again, not on the plan. There's a couple of those. Deanna and Riley already said. The addition of an agricultural zone, I've heard that we may be considering that. I know that was one of the things brought up at Carter's meeting the other day, so I thought maybe addressing what we're gonna do with some of the larger estate style, that would be in I guess Ward 6 and really, anyway, some of the annexed areas they call them. CTA, do we want to try to coordinate major employment centers, get a bus to Ingalls, get some ride shares to Ingalls? I didn't see anything about road condition, which ones need repaving, if that's something we even should do in here. We say we need a new fire station, but we don't show where it would go. And then I don't see any kind of plan. Government Street, something we've been talking about for years. Is it one way, is it two way? Do we leave it like it is? Do we park on it? Do we not park on it? I didn't see anything there. That's kind of what I had under unaddressed. Some of the formatting, I felt like it's very hard to read. It's kind of confusing. It's very verbose. I think there's a lot of good information in here, but it's hard to grab what you need and feel like, okay, I know like what we need to get done and how we're gonna get done. I also felt like it wasn't too specific in a lot of places. It felt kind of generic. Traffic's an issue. It frustrates drivers everywhere, but where is traffic problems in Ocean Springs? Already mentioned that one. I was having a hard time with a lot of the front end, the first 100 pages or so are kind of like background traffic counts and all. I don't see where that factors into the plan. I'm sure it does, but I don't see the link. I have trouble connecting the dots. I don't like that churches are the same color as civic space. I would like to see something different on public use, like City Hall shouldn't be the same as Mosaic Church. I'm picking on Mosaic, that's my church, but we show that as civic space on like the central, it's like damn near the center of Ocean Springs on the biggest commercial corridor we got. Do we really want, if Mosaic failed tomorrow, do we really want that to be civic space? I would think that's a highway commercial use for future land use, right? Then we've got a lot of bicycle improvements, but we never define it. You call it a bike boulevard treatment. Well, I have a pretty good idea what you're meaning, but it's never defined in the plan. What is a bike boulevard treatment, and is it the same everywhere? Stupid things like there's still a lot of mention of subdivision regulations, which we don't have anymore with the UDC. Went back and reread the old plan. So going back to like the intersection improvements that you have 8 of them listed, and you say, hey, intersection improvements could include this, and this, but then I have no idea looking at this plan, like what's wrong with this intersection. I don't know if it needs the crosswalk treatment or whatever. The old plan had this implementation and strategies matrix at the end. It was such a great little like thing you can look at and just have like here's here's the problem, here's where we identified, here's what we need to do about it. So like a matrix, some kind of something that shows us. A couple things stood out to me on the old plan. This was kind of lazy on my part, I'll admit that up front. But, you know, the word hurricane is only in this book 9 times. If I just do F3, fine, whatever. And then it's 46 times in the old plan. The word flood is in this one 5 times versus 142. And all that to say, I don't care how many times it's there, but I don't feel like this plan acknowledges that we're a coastal town with tropical events that affect us greatly. So I felt like we kind of underserved the hazard side of things. I'm almost done, I promise. The exhaustive list for bike and pedestrian improvements, I mean, that's great. I know we're not going to accomplish 25% of them, but it's good. But, you know, can we get a priority? Like, what do we want to get done first? You know, what are the areas that, like, we're really having trouble with cars and bikes together? What are the areas that's like, hey, it'd be great to have one here, but we don't have to have it right away? You know, can we prioritize any of these things? You know, this insistence, I mean, it says like all new streets have to have curb and gutter. You gotta have sidewalks on both sides. And I kind of try to preach this, but when you have 2 5-foot sidewalks and 2 2-foot sections of curb and gutter, you just added 14 feet of impervious area, which is more than a roadway lane, but then we complain about drainage and the unsightliness of concrete. So what are we trying to accomplish? Do we want curb and gutter and sidewalk everywhere, all over the place? What's the most high land value in the city? Downtown, right? How much curb and gutter and sidewalk does it have? Very little. So I mean, I don't know if we need to be there. I could lose this one and I'm fine with it. But what do we want? Do we want concrete or do we want grass? I didn't see any mention of City Hall staying downtown. I know that was a big sticking point in the original plan, or I'm sorry, not original, but the 2010. And then it says, mitigate properties in the V and AE zones through acquisition under emergency management. Well, I think we're missing the word repetitive loss. I mean, surely we're not going to go buy every V and AE house in the city. So a little clarification on like, what's the, why, you know, when do we start looking at acquiring or mitigating properties through acquisition? Like it shouldn't be just because they are in the V and the AE. If they're constructed correctly, it shouldn't matter. And then my last comment, it says under Parks and Rec, it has this kind of strange thing. It says something about fields to place by new development. So I didn't know which one that was, recreational fields. I didn't know what that was talking about. And then too, like if that was specific or not, if we had places to relocate them, any ideas? I didn't see anywhere it says, hey, we're underserved in parts in Ward blank and overserved in Ward blank. So, and you're welcome to have this copy.
Yes, that would be very helpful, and thank you for your thorough work and all on that and those comments, and we will certainly go through each and every one of those. And it's hard for me to comment on them all, obviously, because I won't be able to remember them. But one thing I will say, the comprehensive plan is another term for that is like a general plan. It doesn't generate in and of itself a capital improvements program, which would identify which projects are we going to do, which projects we're going to do first. But a capital improvements program is one of the implementation tools of a comprehensive plan.
I agree 100%, but you know, some of the having it in one section, not having it in the other, and all that. I'd like to be consistent, and you know, I mean, I understand it's. I call it an umbrella. I mean, it's an umbrella plan.
Right. And also, like, if we have somewhere in there where we have an extension of a road or a connection of a road that's part of the comprehensive plan, it's not part of the projects, because that would be eventually up to the mayor and board and the engineers to decide, is this something we want to do, when do we want to do it, and would likely end up in the capital improvements plan and all. But that's just a few comments, but thank you for your hard work reading through it, and we definitely appreciate those comments. We'll go over those thoroughly. Next. I think we're sticking with the planning commission side.
Well, I'll open up. A lot of the concern with everybody like to have a clarification of the future land use map. So, because everybody's saying it being used as a rezoning and all this kind of stuff, if you don't mind giving everybody explanation on that, that would be great.
I'll be glad to. In the comprehensive plan, the future land use map is not zoning. You have a separate development code and zoning ordinance that actually applies zoning. But the comprehensive plan is a basis for zoning. And the future land use plan itself is looking out 20 to 25 years into the future, but in some instances, we try to look 5 years as well, because as planners, we recommend this plan being updated every 5 years at a minimum, especially in a dynamic community such as the city of Ocean Springs, where you have a lot of growth, a lot of changes, a lot of traffic and so forth. So when it comes to future land use, we're looking at existing conditions, existing land use, and existing traffic and existing infrastructure, and see how we would anticipate this land use, what direction it would head in. I want to give you sort of a practical example of what existing land use map is about. Let's just say, for instance, and I grew up in Batesville, Mississippi, and it had US Highway 51 running north and south. It goes all the way from Chicago to New Orleans. And then, of course, later on in the 50s and 60s, Interstate 55 was built, but still 51 is there. So in Batesville, and you can find this all over the country, not just in Mississippi, when 51, let's just say, is a 2-lane highway, you can have a lot of homes that front on that 2-lane highway, especially as you get toward the edges of town and so forth, that you'd have a lot of homes there. Well, when at some point the traffic exceeds that 2-lane capacity, then the state and the federal government will oftentimes come in and create a 5-lane, either 2 lanes in each way with a turn lane, or sometimes maybe a 4-lane divided. And you have more and more traffic. And you go to see, and those houses may become a law office, a dentist office. Someone may tear one down and build a drugstore or whatever it may be. Well, let's just say that area really needs to go. It's residential, but it's headed toward commercial. Traffic, they widen the highway and all of that. So in the comprehensive plan, it would be more than likely, if you want that to develop commercial, you would put a future land use in there as a commercial development. That way, that future commercial growth is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. On the other hand, let's just say you have an well-established residential neighborhood that you want to maintain its integrity and keep it like it is. Well, obviously, it's going to be zoned residential. Your future land use would be residential. That helps protect that, adds another layer of keeping it from going into commercial. And the only way you can rezone an area is there's one thing. It says if it was a Scribner's error, if somebody wrote like R2 and they meant to write C2. And that was just a Scribner's error. But other than that, there's got to be a change in the character of the neighborhood, and there's got to be a public need. So what we're doing with this comprehensive plan is it's looking out into the future. And this plan, the comprehensive plan, is a guide, a physical guide for the future development of the city. With a city growing like Ocean Springs, like I said, even though it's a 20 to 25 year plan, when it comes to this future land use, I sort of like looking at within the next 5 years. Not that you can't look beyond, but what's going to be happening in the near future on this comprehensive plan. So that's the difference. If you want to help maintain the stability of a neighborhood, a residential area, and then your future land use is residential. If an area is transitioning because of a number of reasons, that whatever that may be, then that future land use can reflect that from, say, residential to commercial. Was that adequate, or was there something I left out you wanted me to mention on that?
No, that's
Okay, all right.
very good. Thank
Hey,
you.
Mike, just one thing. I mean, touch on it if you can.
20, 25 years, looking out 20, 25 years ahead. I mean, that's not some arbitrary number you've picked. That's something that's required in the statute for comprehensive plans.
In the statute, I believe it's 1988 planning legislation that was adopted by the legislature that we have to prepare comprehensive plans for. Actually, in that, as a definition of a comprehensive plan, says the planning horizon is 20 to 25 years. That's one thing we're taught in planning school. And so this planning legislation follows right along that. There's also 4 minimum elements that are required to go in this comprehensive plan. Goals and objectives, which is really where we're getting public input on those goals and objectives. A land use plan, I sort of refer to it as a future land use plan. Transportation plan, again, I sort of refer to that as a future one. And then community facilities. That could be things like parks, recreation, water, sewer, city halls, fire stations, police stations, things like that. So, yes, that's where the planning horizon of 20 to 25 years, that's based on the law in the state of Mississippi, and it's pretty much universal. But certainly when it comes to a growing community like the city of Ocean Springs, I like to look from future land use, even as close as 5 years down the road. So, all right.
You have Matt?
Last thing I just wanted to bring up, we'll probably hit on it a little bit more, but Andy hit on the whole about civic use and stuff. There are several churches on Highway 90 that y'all have marked in the future land map as civic use. In my honest opinion, and I think a lot of other people, they need to remain commercial. That is our commercial corridor. Those churches have conditional uses, and if they were ever to vacate, it needs to, in the future, it needs to remain commercial. So I think those kind of need to be pinpointed. One of those churches out there right now is up for sale, and somebody's looking at it, so it might not even be a church. So we'll dive off a little more into that.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
If I can speak to that point real quick, one of the complications in designated churches is that they're institutional. There's a certain expectation that they will continue into the future, and they have a very strong constituency. So when that constituency sees the map and they see it as a future land use of residential, even though a church could fit in residential, they question whether it's intended to be redeveloped as residential, or in the case of commercial, whether it's intended to be displaced by commercial
Okay,
development.
so my concern with it is like residential, that's one thing is, okay, you got a church in residential, civic, everything, I understand that. But for commercial, if you go and theoretically were to look at a rezoning in the future on that as a church, it affects all the properties that are commercial around it. State statute on stuff goes commercial has a lot less versus if it was civic or residential to commercial. So you're affecting a lot of the properties around that when you're looking at, for instance, Mosaic Church, which is 5.5 acres of property, that affects a lot of parcels around that.
And
So
it is currently zoned in a
commercial,
classification of well controlled and used commercially.
correct. Yeah, so I think just in the future land use, it just needs to remain as that. They have conditional use on it. I agree with the church being there, so.
Yes, I agree with that. And because typically churches can go most anywhere.
Right.
Yes.
So
So
I'm just
there's no
looking at-
need, changing the zoning to accommodate a church in an area that's a commercial area.
Correct.
I agree.
Thank you. Marshall?
Well, first of all, I want to commend both Andy and Matt, because they've spent a great deal of time on it, and a lot of these
I agree.
topics were brought up at our last planning commission meeting. But I think two things. One, in terms of clarity in the future land use map, there needs to be a little more detail in there in terms of what your explanation was, the logic behind it, because the big thing is to explain this to the community. And when they look at the future land use map, you know, there's potential heartburn in there because you don't explain logically in enough detail. So I think a little more detail there would be helpful. I think if you take all of Andy's detailed analysis and do a crosswalk, you'll find that you could probably streamline the comprehensive plan a lot. You have a lot of words in there, but sometimes you get lost in the words. So I think it would be a very useful effort to take his detailed check sheet, go through, update based on that, and then have some further explanation in terms of the future land use plan that is more clear to the community in general, because you're going to go back out and provide, I assume, an update to the community. And it's got to be very clear when you do that, that in the areas that Andy's pointed out, and that both Matt and Andy had pointed out on the future land use plan, I think in any introduction to the community especially, that needs to be very clear up front in terms of your introductory remarks, and maybe even in a handout, because otherwise you spend a lot of time where we're trying to explain to the community, we get lost in, unfocused questions. Okay, so I guess I'm really talking future sessions to be a little more focused on these areas that we know need clarification. Okay. That's all.
Thank you. Next planning commission member?
They pretty much covered anything that I had to say.
Any more planning commission members?
I'm good.
All right.
One last thing I'll throw out there. So looking at the development tiers of the 2010 comprehensive plan to the future land use as the city as whole, what was a lot of the reasoning for looking at changing some of the areas that were in the 2010 versus right now?
Or in the future land use?
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be hard for me to hit every parcel, but typically what we look in those are the existing land uses that are around that. If there's been any change in those, we look at the level of infrastructure as far as the streets, water, sewer, and so forth, and sort of the demands in those areas. It's sort of in general that which we'll look at when we're putting a land use designation, a future land use designation down.
I just have this one that you might be able to, it was off of South Jackson as having it zoned as commercial. Do you know what might be the reasoning for that one?
Where is it?
Off of South Jackson, it would be,
Jackson and Paps.
no, it's Front Beach and Jackson.
And I think we're different versions, the adjacent parcels
Yeah.
have changed, right?
Right, but why is that one right there zoned future use as commercial?
The existing zoning designation there is into.
Yeah, that shouldn't, I'm not so sure that should be a DMR property, because DMR only focuses on main high water line out.
Well,
So-
this is national, it's purchase of CAT funds.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that answers it. Thank you.
Sure. And that's got to be natural now.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Well,
I'll also
back in
need to-
22,
yeah.
Y'all
Well,
pulled
it
this
used to
off
be a
of
apartment
there,
complex
this is
there
a
that got
public
knocked down, so
designation
that's probably
there,
why
y'all
it's
took that off.
yeah.
It's been there since 1986. Needs to go back on there.
So that triangle?
Follow the line across, but that was taken off. It's been that way since the 80s.
Yeah, I think the big thing is that anything that's future use commercial is probably what we need to be prepared to explain to the general public, because that's where the biggest heartburn is going to arise out of that. And I think if you do that up front in terms of the thought process you go through, that'll help.
And typically, and I agree with what you're saying, 100% what you're saying. Typically, those explanations go on in public meetings and public hearings as opposed to putting that in writing in the comprehensive plan itself, unless it's something, because there's a lot of parcels we cover in a comprehensive planning area, a lot of those, and certainly they need to be answered, no doubt about it, I agree with that.
What I'm trying to say is that, I've attended a couple of your public sessions, and we don't get a lot of focus on those. So going forward, take advantage of all the time that has been spent here and the future public sessions, a handout with some specifics, like the thought process. You don't have to go partial by partial, but say, here's, explain it, and have a handout that explains in detail. You know what areas are going to have the greatest heartburn. Okay. And that'll help get through the whole process.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so it sounds like that concludes on the planning commission side, Mr. Mayor.
At the moment.
At the moment, yes. Yeah, I'm not trying to set you guys up. That's pretty funny.
You became an attorney since last time.
At the moment.
Counselor reserves the right to.
I stand corrected on that.
He's the one who took offense.
About, Board of Finance.
I'll make a few, Mayor. Ms. Lawler, I would like to see somewhere in our introduction that state the reasons we're doing this. Not just we want to do it, 2010, that we're going to 2025. Make a statement that we're required by the legislature to do this. There's a lot of conversation that we're just doing it.
Yeah.
You need to, I would like to see that.
Well made.
Put that in the introduction somewhere in your flowery words.
Yeah. And refer to that planning legislation. We'll be glad to do that, great point.
Yes, sir. And I don't know whether we want to get in the weeds or not, but short-term rentals are an area that's a lot of concern in my ward, and I'd like to see us if we can. And I understand it's covered in other codes, but I'd like to make some kind of statement about short-term rentals. And walkways, sidewalks, kind of expand upon that.
What kind of sidewalks?
Sidewalks,
Okay.
sidewalks, walkways, whatever.
Walkways or sidewalks, okay.
And I do notice that there's one missing, I'll fill you in, that's in my ward, it's not listed in here too. But those are two areas especially. The transportation part, I really dug into, and I appreciate Andy digging in, but the transportation part especially, the roadways, the walkways, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
And I can get details of where I would like to go with our relationship with the county and the way they pave, the need for sidewalks in certain areas, et cetera.
Sure. That sounds great.
So,
My only thing, since I'm keeping track of all this, if I can just CC me in the emails, I save them all
I can
in the
do that.
same spot.
whoever I need to be
Who I
the
summarize
point,
with?
I'll let you
Yeah, that's.
contact you.
Send you that.
Yeah, you might just use me as a single point of contact.
That's fine.
I'll just
get you
forward
a copy.
everything over.
I
Yeah,
can-
yours were
You want your
forwarded
copy back?
previous.
I'll email it to you. No, I'm talking about the one I
The
just
new
read
one,
from.
oh yeah, email that to me.
He's got it.
Mike, I got a couple things, nothing real major. Andy, I will say Andy's, this was very thorough. Way more in the weeds than I got with it, but,
It was very thorough.
and you covered a lot of the issues that I had found in here myself. Couple of typos and things left out that need to be corrected. I found listed in the fire stations. Listed Station 2 and Station 3 is on Pine Drive and on Ocean Springs Road, and they're actually on Government Street and Bienville.
Okay.
So that needs to be cleaned up. Lemoyne Park, in the parks section, was completely left off the list of anything to be done there, and there's a lot that needs to be done there. That one needs a lot of improvement.
All right, and so we had met with the Parks and Recreation Director, and I suppose we'll follow back
Yeah,
up here.
Lemoyne was the one park I saw left off the list. There
Okay.
may have been
All right,
another,
we'll follow
but
back
that
up
one
here.
was for
Thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
And then the out east Highway 90 corridor development probably should be addressed a little more about the potential. Because we all know, basically, Bechtel West is done. There's not a lot we can do there, and it doesn't need to be any more done there. But we need to look at the Ocean Springs Road to 57 corridor on Beeville as far as development opportunities and just land use out there needs to be addressed a little better.
Okay. The future land use out there.
Land use on 90 out east.
It's mostly highway commercial right now.
It is, but I'm not talking about rezone, I'm just talking about the potential land uses, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's all I got.
And on Ocean Springs Road, there's a couple of areas that were brought to my attention too that I'm happy to just kind of point out, just ones and twosies.
Sure.
Where there was some question marks as far as it's residential, but there's a business and probably going to be more residential than business. And there's a property there that has multiple homes on it. They're family. And on the map, it's not zoned residential. So just little things like that in my area that I noticed. I do appreciate it, and in reading this, I read it, for what it is, and it's an overview.
Just a general plan. That's what it is.
And nothing is codified. I think where we need to be very careful is in talking with our constituents and misleading them on what this comprehensive plan can and cannot do. Especially areas that right now may not be the color that we want them to be, that can easily be changed. And it is being done so right now, and that was always the intent. So I just want to caution all of us when speaking to our constituents to make sure that we educate them the right way and that we don't lead them in the wrong direction and get them worried about something that there's no need for any parties.
And I would like to just add what you were saying, the comprehensive plan is just a plan. Some communities, some states, they refer to it as a general plan, the overall general plan. It is required by state law for you to apply zoning. And zoning it has legal teeth to it. There's a zoning ordinance, this is what you're gonna follow for the zoning until you get a rezoning. What's allowed is allowed, what's not allowed is not allowed. So that has legal teeth in it. The comprehensive plan is just a plan that is dynamic and can change from time to time as it needs to be. So when I was, Will had asked me earlier to sort of speak on the planning legislation. I probably should have added to it at that time, the significance between a plan is just that plan without legal teeth that guides and directs the city and future land uses amongst other things. And that zoning ordinance does have a legal teeth.
And I think that's something that we can't say enough. We
Right.
can drive that
Yeah, I
home
agree.
and beat that horse till it's dead.
I agree. I totally agree.
And don't use zoning and future land use as the same thing, because it's not the same thing.
And so being clear on the difference between the two,
Right. Because it's easy to confuse, it really is. And so, we definitely need to make sure that is clear to everyone.
One's a guideline for what the zoning can be, and then there's the actual
And
zoning.
I think it'd probably be good for a description of that in the
Yeah.
future land use
Yeah, I
section of
agree.
the comprehensive plan. Put those definitions in there of what a future land use map is, a comprehensive plan. It's a guide, and then the actual zoning ordinance has the legal teeth and enforcement of law.
I think that's just gonna clarify and it'll educate, and then that way
Yes, I agree with that.
there's no misdirection.
And we'll put that in the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I want to add one, I always feel like I beat people up when I give bullet points, but I do want to say I like table 2. That's the one that says like, hey, if we say residential low density, we're figuring it's R1, R2, R10. If we say, I think that, that's the kind of, I like the
That's
charts.
the implementing zoning district. So when I look at a rezone, I can tell you unequivocally whether the rezone should go through and whether it's spot zoning or not, and that's what I use.
That's why I love charts.
Visual charts are always good.
Well, one thing I like to add is once you got through that list, I felt pretty beat up. No, you did a great job. I appreciate that. That's part of the planning process. No, you did a great job. Oh, yeah. He knows about joking with that, so I appreciate you. I took a lot of hard work and time, I know. All right, next.
I do kind of have a question before everybody else. And this is,
Okay, before everybody, okay.
go ahead.
I was just wondering, do we want to, or finishing up with the alderman, or?
This is kind of just as an overall
Okay,
kind of thing,
Go
and this
ahead.
is more of a will question and everything. The reason for the comprehensive plan being redone and everything for the newly annexed area, what is our time frame with the newly annexed area to have something done so we can look at zoning within that area?
Carter's March or April was the 1 year deadline.
April 11th is the deadline for us having the areas annexed.
Yeah, our UDC requires a rezone, annexed area, sorry, to be rezoned by the city within 1 year from the annexation, which is that date. So obviously, procedurally, to implement zoning in the new annexed area, you have to have a comp plan, a future land use map on that area. So the city will need to pass a comp plan to, and then move forward with the rezoning in the annexed area.
And the old comp plan was 2010, so y'all were 15 years over that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I
So
brought
it's
up with
not
Mike.
unusual that if you have 20, so that meant that your comp plan went to 2010. So it's not unusual that you would update a comp plan after that amount of time.
And just like Mike said, the comprehensive plan statute, I mentioned, it says goals and objectives. It specifically mentions long range, 20 to 25 years. So we're getting towards the tail end of the existing plan. In addition to that, previous plan doesn't obviously contemplate the annexed area that wasn't in the city at that time.
No, it's not in there.
Well, did I hear you say the UDC is within 1 year, or is there any kind of state or federal or?
It's the UDC, but I think we need to follow the code. I mean, it's
Well,
not
I'm not
yet.
saying otherwise, I'm just.
No, yeah, it's the UDC.
Is that like a common, I mean, where did that come from, any idea?
I'm not sure.
It's very common in UDCs or zoning ordinances that they have some sort of documentation for how to zone property. A lot of times they'll bring it in under a certain zoning and then somebody will just come steal the same quote from several people. So it's not uncommon that it comes in as R1 around the country and other states.
Right.
But that's not how it works in Mississippi. It comes in as however it's zoned and it stays that way until it's rezoned.
And I will add, yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Hey, I will add, the 12 months that's in the UDC can make it a little tight, because sometimes preparing a comprehensive plan can take from 12 to 18 months in doing a comprehensive plan. So that does make it a little tight to follow that time constraint, but that's one thing we're trying to do at this point in time. That's where we want to keep this plan moving forward, get it adopted at a reasonable pace, and then get the zoning.
Another thing I wanted to point out, in the last plan, there wasn't implementing zoning districts under the plan. I insisted on that being in there because you don't want to guess what you can rezone to. You just want stating the facts. So that was not in the last plan, but that was something I thought was really important to be in this.
That's it, yes.
You want it?
These two gentlemen mainly, but everybody's covered the main topics, but there are some, Alderman Blackman touched on what I would call technical, non-controversial things that need to be corrected.
Yes.
The location of the fire stations.
Sure.
The EOC was identified here at City Hall. It's not. It's the main fire station. Public Works was listed at 712 Washington Avenue. It's not at 712 Pine Drive. There are a number of those. I've been meaning to email you those, but
Please do, because we want to make sure everything is correct in there.
I appreciate you covering Lemoyne Park. I had that on my list because that's in my ward. Well, it still is. It still is. It's not part that transitions to Ward 5. So. Well, yeah, it is too. Yeah, it is. Actually, it will be. It'll be Ward 5.
I'll finally have a park. Take one night.
Mike, I'll go ahead. I just feel good that the planning commission is vetting this very thorough before it gets to the Board of Aldermen. I do agree with several topics they touched on, especially concerning the civic and public, just going across the whole. But personally, I don't think we need to add that in, but that's my personal opinion. I think we're leaving zone what they're doing now.
Right, yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think we need to just
I made that statement earlier, I agree with that, and I agree with you.
We're not changing the zoning, Bobby.
I understand,
Yeah.
but I don't even like it in this
I know, but I
plan.
don't want us to put that out there that we're doing that, because that's not what we're doing.
Okay, well, we don't need it in the plan then.
We need a comprehensive plan,
I
but
didn't
we're
say-
not
we
doing the
don't-
zoning.
What I was just talking about was the civic across the board on your land use
Talking
map.
about future land use
Oh,
map.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think, if you're not gonna plan on doing it, don't put it in there.
Oh.
And that's my take on it. That's just one thing that really stood out.
We got-
Yeah, yeah, they got a little, yeah, they got a
And as
little.
far as the plan, I agree, it's just a plan, but we need to work diligently to make it as correct as we possibly can.
Now, so look, I agree with that. When I say it's a general comprehensive plan without teeth, that doesn't mean that it doesn't need to be 100% correct. It does, yes. And I appreciate all of that input. I really do.
Yeah, there's some in Ward 3 that I noticed that commercial goes way back into some of the neighborhoods. I get with you on. The only thing I noticed is Andy and Matt did a great job talking, and Detness also. Every word in there that I read was develop, and I just, we're for natural development, not just, develop all in 3 or 4 years.
I agree.
So do we want to have another work session once the changes are made to this? Are we coming back for another one? Are we going to go into public hearing, or how do we want to handle this moving forward?
Let me tell you what I think our standpoint with his input is there's some we can take and build in there. There's gonna take some outside input on specifics from some people, just like the future land use you were talking about or whatever. So there may need a little bit of an opportunity for us to not only take what we've got today, but maybe reach out to the Parks and Rec director, or planning commission members, board of aldermen members, maybe, to make some fine tuning and adjustments to make sure it's as close to 100% correct as we can get it.
So is that a yes or a no?
That's the, we're gonna need a little bit. of input.
Sounds like you're gonna go ahead and make these adjustments that we talked about today, and then, come back down and maybe meet with, some select group of people and go over some stuff like Kevin's issues, or, what you skipped, or missed in the, Parks and Rec department. Addresses and things like that, so, I would think after this session, when you're edits, we should be pretty close.
I would agree with that statement.
But once that's complete, I think we're obligated to a process here, and I think it needs to go back to the planning commission for their review once again before coming to the board.
All again.
That's a process that we've always followed.
Well, it's one that I've always insisted on, and I support our boards and commissions there.
Yeah, well, that's the process.
I think that's the plan anyway.
It needs to be polished.
Although I prefer Andy not to,
I'm not going back to my in-laws for a while.
So just so I understand, we'll whatever housekeeping issues that we want addressed through Carter to you guys. You guys will make those changes, and then that will be presented once again to the planning commission, ultimately to the board.
That's great.
I'm sure you can come up with a document where all the changes are highlighted, so it's easier
So
for
we don't
them
have
to.
to, yeah.
And
there's a few things under like chapter 5 and everything, like 2.9 and everything, addressing the underpass that is proposed on the Halsted, emergency evacuation with pumping, et cetera. I would like to see, a reason why that is being looked at for emergency access. And this is something that you might be able to hit a little bit more on, because if we have a derail of a train in Ocean Springs, we've only got really 2 accesses besides the park and down by the Ocean Springs Biloxi Bridge. It's nice to have it in there of like, hey, this is what we would like to see, but it's nice to have an explanation of why it needs to be there.
That was a curveball for me.
And there is a sewer main running right through there, so that's,
So what's your point about the sewer main running through there?
I mean, you have to deal with that for that underpass.
Okay.
But basically what I'm saying is it's kind of nice to have, like, you get what I'm saying, of
Sewer main the size of it.
where you're coming to that.
Okay,
All right,
I got you.
thank you.
Couple points, I guess, to summarize, at least from my perspective. You had input from the public at our last planning commission meeting. I assume you have copies of all those emails in terms of what their concerns were. Is that correct?
Whatever was sent to us.
That
we
was
had it.
emails and cards and.
Yeah, okay, so I think if you go through those, that'll help you prepare for the public sessions. It was pointed out that it would be very nice to have up front clear why we are doing this, as the state requires it and so on. So you ought to change your introduction up here, right at the start, why we're doing this, what drives it, and summarize that, hey, this isn't a detailed thing, this is a look to the future. A little more explanation up front,
Yeah.
take some of the heartburn out of
And we
it.
can put the planning legislation in there as a matter of fact, what it is, and what's required.
Yeah, I think it's very clear, if your introduction is a little more clear, that would help with
More
everyone.
well taken.
And then you have some detailed input from 2 gentlemen here that would go in, and then I think it's a very good suggestion that when we get the updated thing, that you highlight all the changes. It'll expedite our review of going through them, because a lot of times it's been sent by people going through these in detail. And a good start point, but I think all these insights have made it a much better document and much more focused.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your input on that.
And then, again, when you give it to us for review, I think what ought to accompany that is whatever handout you're planning to do for a public session. Okay, you're gonna have some more public sessions, right, Carter?
You'll have 2 more public comment sessions. One will be at the planning commission and one will be before the board.
Okay, but it doesn't go back to the public again like they've done in the past.
Well, the public will be able to view it online, but when you have your next, when this thing comes before the planning commission, you'll have a public comment session in that hearing. Okay, and then when the board reviews it, then they will have a public comment session in that board meeting or that public hearing. So in all, that would be 6 times the public has had to comment on this
Okay,
plan.
then my suggestion would be again that you do a sheet like you were making a public presentation, and that comes in with your input to us, so we know what you're focused on, so we facilitate our session with the public when we have our session. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So like talking points based on what you received.
Okay.
And you know from the public comments, and in general, where are the concerns of the public are, right?
Right.
And that's, if you do that with a little sheet, that will help us have a very, effective session.
Yes, sir.
All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Good? Good. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks everyone for coming out.
Aye. Thank you.
Hey, Rob, before you're back, there's a plate, Coulter's plate over here. Before somebody rolls over and busts it up.